Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to ask the question, what is the very heart of Dungeons and Dragons? What is the absolutely most important part of Dungeons and Dragons? The part where if it's not there, everything else falls apart. All the thematic elements are useless without it. What is the absolute pure heart of Dungeons and Dragons? All right. Now, it's a complicated question, and I think I see the answer clearly, right? Because of the most conservative show on television, Yellowstone. No spoilers for Yellowstone in this content. I'm just going to talk about it at a high level, abstract concept level. All right, so I'm really fascinated by this Yellowstone show. And the reason why is I think Yellowstone is the future of Dungeons and Dragons in that. Here we go. D&D 4e cracks the entire Dungeons and Dragons community in half. Half the people are like, I'm never playing this again. They run over to Paizo and they find Pathfinder, also called Dungeons and Dragons. In a fun wink wink way, usually most people are like Dungeons and Dragons 3.75, right? Like, because that's what it was, right? And so basically they run over to Pathfinder and like, oh, D&D 4e bad, I'm out, right? Like, and then half the other ones are like, hey, we ride or die for D&D. We ain't going nowhere. I love those people, right? Like, I'm one of them, right? I will be buying every version of Dungeons and Dragons until you put me into a pine box, right? Like until I drop into a pine box and they put me 6 feet under. That's when I'll stop buying Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, so because I'm ride or die for them, like like from the figurative hip hop song perspective, right? So I love Dungeons and Dragons, and it's super important to me, and I'm gonna be there for it. I'm allied to it, right? It's important to me. I'm never gonna abandon it. It's just that's the way it is, right? And I know there's lots of people out there like, oh, I'm fickle and really don't, I'm not D&D can stay or go, right? I'm not one of them people, right? So, all right. So basically, Yellowstone is definitely every Dungeon Master content except for 12 to 18. They got to wait a few years. Actually, it's even for them, but they got to wait until they watch it, right? So it's every Dungeon Master content. It's only a question of when you watch it. And the reason why is it's a powerful, extremely powerful story that really gets to the meat of what's important in a thing. And actually, it's very close to Dungeons and Dragons because the whole show is about this lifestyle that a very distinct number of Americans are like, this is critically important, right? And we're gonna make sure it stays here and it's valuable and it's special, right? And it's the cowboy lifestyle, right? Like that's what they want to save, right? And the whole world, and like people in Montana, right, according to the show, are like, we're gonna do everything we can to maintain the cowboy lifestyle, to make sure it still is available and it can be lived today, right? Just like Dungeons and Dragons is like, hey, Gary Gygax made this thing in 1974. A lot of people don't get it. There's only about 10 or 15 million people in the world that are engaged and active with this. The rest of the world doesn't understand it, doesn't think it's important, but we are going to make sure it remains here and that there is always a place for it, right? Same thing, right? Cowboy lifestyle, Dungeons and Dragons, right? Just a small group of people understand it and value it, right? But the people who understand it and value it are like, we will make sure this never dies, right? That's what the whole show is about, okay? Now, it has all these thematic elements, all these incredible things in it, right? It's got cowboys, it's got cowgirls, right? It's got horses, it's got Montana, it's got a ranch, right? It's got tons of land, right? And it's all about land, beautiful vistas of land, right? And it's got rope, and it's got, mechanical projectile weapons, right? Like, it's got America, right? Like, and it's got cowboy hats and boots and what you put on boots, spurs, right? Like, it's got all these thematic elements, right? Dungeons and Dragons. It's got dice. Ooh, super cool. It's got minis, right? It's got players. It's got dungeon masters, right? It's got dragons. It's got dungeons, right? It's got maps, right? It has knowledge and And it has 3 pillars. It's got combat and social interaction and exploration. It's got all these cool thematic elements, right? So you have this amazing show, right? That's like just showing the entire world. This is how you bind, right? This is how you bind a market that contains both liberals and conservatives, right? Nothing else right now is able to do this, right? Like Yellowstone is incredibly unique, right? And Wizards of the Coast is in a space where like they got a new CEO for Hasbro, right? And they got a new CEO for WotC. You know what those two need to put up, right? They do not need to put up messaging, right? That is Hollywood parallel. They got to put up numbers, right? Real sales, right? So they want everybody under the tent, right? All right, so we look at Yellowstone, and I was like, what is this all about, right? Is this about the cowboys? Is this about the horses? Is this about hats and spurs and mechanical projectile weapons? What is the real heart of this thing, right? Because it's so special and so unique and so spectacular. What's the heart of it, right? Well, I'll tell you what the heart of Yellowstone is. It's the cattle. It's the cattle, right? It's the cows. Because without them, nothing else matters, right? You know what a cowboy is? A cowboy is a dude who gets on a horse with a rope, right? And herds cattle, right? And if there ain't no cattle to herd, the cowboy ain't needed. And if cowboy ain't needed, and if there's no cattle, you don't need the ranch. You don't need the huge open vistas of land, right? You don't need any of it. But because the cattle are there, right, they need to roam across huge tracts of land, and that means you need the ranch. And when you have the ranch, you need cowboys to put everything in place. There are fences that are going to keep the cattle from going into other people's areas, right, so that other people can poach them, right? So you need fences. You know who build those fences? Cowboys, right? Like, and cowgirls, right? And the show shows that the cowboys and cowgirls working toward this. And there are wolves who come out and they're going to eat the cattle. And you know what you need to take care of a wolf? You need a mechanical projectile weapon, right? Just like Percy DeRollo uses, right? Because he's a cowboy, right? And Taliesin Jaffe dropped him right in the middle of the house that D&D built, Vox Machina. Okay, so it's so the reality is that is what Yellowstone is about. It's the cattle. If the cattle aren't there, nothing matters. All the other thematic elements are useless and fall apart. Okay? What is the heart of Dungeons and Dragons? Is it the dice? Is it the players? Is it the dungeon masters? Is it the cool maps, right? Is it the books, right? Is it the art? What is it? I'm going to tell you right now. It's unbound identity. Okay? Dungeons and Dragons' ability to give 100 lives to every player and to give 1,000 lives to every dungeon master, that is the heart of Dungeons and Dragons. If we don't have the ability to play player characters and non-player characters, none of it matters. None of it matters. There are dice in other games. There are maps in other games, right? There are dragons in other games. There are dungeons in other games, right? And all those games fall short. And the reason why is in 1974, in my humble opinion, Gary Gygax created Unbound Immersion. Unbound Identity and Unbound Immersion. He created Unbound Identity. He said, you are no longer trapped in one life. You can live as many lives as you want. They will X out parallel into the 75 years you have on this planet. All right. All the lives are parallel. They can all be lived in parallel time in the IRL time you have. They can't take you. I'm going to get an extra life, so I get 1,000 lives that Gary Gygax. I get the life God gave me, the 1,000 lives Gary Gygax gave me, right? And then I'm going to get another life when I die, where that's going to be eternal, right? Gary can't help you with the last one, right? But he can expand the number of lives you have on this planet, right? No other game in the world can do that. Nothing in the world can do that, right? In the way that Gary did it, which is super unique, super special, and that is the heart of Dungeons and Dragons. It is the player characters. It is the non-player characters. They are the cattle of Dungeons and Dragons. All that's my opinion. What do you think is the very heart? What is the part where if you pull it out of Dungeons and Dragons, all the other thematic elements are useless and make no sense, right? Do you think I'm right? Is it the player characters and the non-player characters, these lives that Gary gave us? Or do you think it's something different? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.